Ready?
Hi.
And go.
All right, thank you. My name is Robert. Everybody is talking about the lockdown and how it's affecting us in different ways. First, there's a fear in the entire of Kenya, from the grandma to the kids to the parents. Everybody is afraid. Yes, that fear was very founded, and it's very founded for everybody who is experiencing the disease firsthand, and especially the one who have lost a loved one. And so this discussion does not claim that the disease is not real. The disease is real. People have lost their lives. But we have to step back and ask ourselves what it is that we are doing. Because we initially, when there was the unknowns and there was the fear, and it looked like people are wishing us doom in Africa, looking at the pictures of northern Italy and how people were dying, we can understand the fear and how we would quickly say, okay, we don't want to get into that situation. But many months later, you would imagine that we should be able to say, well, it doesn't look like the situation is as severe as was predicted. And so how do we change course? Do you continue doing the same thing even with the other things that we have to balance? So this is not saying that we need to forget the precautions and what we have to do to be able to protect one another, or it's simply saying the fear that was initially spread on us did not happen, and that's a blessing. But continuing, therefore, on a course of locking down an economy without the justification of that fear, then it doesn't make sense. And this is what I say. Initially, when our local experts copied exactly what World Health Organization was recommending to New Yorkers was being recommended to a slum dweller in Kibera. How do you social distance in an environment of congestion? It doesn't make sense. And therefore, some of these guidelines have not been domesticated, or they have not been recalibrated for our situation, our reality. It doesn't mean that we just need to get on podiums and regurgitate exactly what we heard from others abroad. We should be able to look at our reality and say, what is our problem? Because as I say, all solutions are local. All solutions are actually ethnic. That's why, saying that we're going to copy exactly what World Health Organization is telling New Yorkers to do, or people in Italy to do, or people in Australia to do, for us to be able to do that in Africa or in Kenya in a slum, or in the name of best practices, does not make sense at all. That's why Africans don't look up to, sub-Saharan Africa don't look up to Eskimos or Icelandics for solutions. Snowmobiles will never replace the camel on the desert. That's why Italian culinary arts will never put ugali on the Ugandan table, or fufu on the Nigerian table. All solutions are ethnic, and we have to recalibrate some of these solutions that are coming from international organization with all their credibility. But we always have to look at our solution. Otherwise, basically, as the president was out saying that this disease is a war, we have to look at it like that. It's a war. And in war, there are victims and plunders are made. For the most part, we are grateful. It's a blessing that we have not had as many victims. That's a blessing. But in terms of plunder, look at it like it's conditions that are creating, or it's a problem. It's a disease. A disease, actually, let me go back a little bit and say it's a disease that we now know it's infecting, but not necessarily making you sick. Otherwise, we are detaining people in medical detentions who once never required medication, and yet we are saying they are sick. There's a difference between having an infection, the evidence of a virus in your bloodstream or in your nostril, and being sick from it. And we cannot make decisions on having something in my body that doesn't necessarily make me sick. And yes, it's true, there is the conditions of infecting other people. But this is what we've done. If we're isolating to be able to protect the person who is elderly or the person who is sick from, let's say, diabetes, high blood pressure, then what should happen is the person who is sick or elderly is the one who needs to isolate themselves, not the person who is not sick. And that's what we actually do. And this is not carelessness. For example, in hospital, and I speak as a clinician, in hospitals, if you have 500 patients in a hospital and you're admitting a patient who has, say, tuberculosis, which is airborne, then you would not logically isolate 500 people to protect themselves from this one case of tuberculosis or TB. You would isolate this one case in a negative pressure room to protect the 500. That's logic. What we are doing, we are actually choosing what I would say the absurd. We are isolating 500 people for the sake of one. And yes, the one is important. What we need to do is the reverse of that, is protect this one by encouraging and educating this person, the elderly, the sick, to stay away from the crowds. Otherwise, we know that youth is not immunity. But for us Africans, for us Kenyans, is the only insurance package, is the only stimulus package we have. Otherwise, in these war conditions that have been created, or the analogy that was given by our president announcing the lockdown or the disease and what we have to do, we have to realize that many are looking at it exactly like that. Because in war conditions, what happens? Economies collapses. The author of the book called The Fate of Rome says resilience is the capacity for society to recover from injury. And pandemics causes that injury, but they don't necessarily always have to cause a collapse. But some pandemics, like they did in Rome, they created conditions for an entire empire to collapse. And the fissures, the structure is coming apart. When you see companies that are on a cash crisis, they are looking for strategic investors in this environment. You have banks that are, reserving capital in this condition or taking in more debt to be able to survive. If you're looking at our budget, we are saying that we're going to be taxing the pensioner, or we're going to be having tax rules. These are all signs of a system that is experiencing financial stress, and that is not good. And therefore, to continually lock down an economy on the basis of what has been advised by others, even when it's clear for us that our reality is different, is not prudent. And we have to change that. Because the not changing of that is literally selling our country for mere beans to others. Because when those conditions, central bank came out the other day and said 75% of all small businesses are going to be collapsing in June because they don't have cash. And we know that the economy is cash starved. How do we need to change that? We cannot, in that condition, just say simply, okay, we're going to somehow recover. We are doing this to protect life and property. Yes, we are doing that, but looking at our reality, even as we continue to do testing and numbers, we can truly say empirically that the disease is, yes, infecting people, but for majority, overwhelming majority of Kenyans, they're not getting sick, and that's a good thing. But to be able to ignore the economic factor is basically to say that we literally, as these banks and companies becomes weak and they're looking for people to invest in, those companies that we own that are going to be owned by the strategic investor, because the strategic investor is bringing in debt, and this debt is going to be converted into equity in the future. Why did this happen? It happened because of our failure to recognize our situation and to recalibrate our measures for our situation. And again, in the beginning, the fear was founded, but many months down the road, it is not. And we have to change course. Otherwise, we are going to wake up into a world that is ours in name only, because we failed to see, we failed to do that which is obvious. And I hope we wake up and let yes, let us get out there and do exactly what we're supposed to be doing, open our economy. We are going to continue washing our hands and observing other hygienic measures. By the same time, we cannot just simply say we're going to sell away the entire nation because we failed to say. And that's what we have to do. My name is Robert. Thank you.